My name is Emily, and what I'm about to share is something I never imagined experiencing, especially on what seemed like an ordinary day. My life changed in ways I'm still struggling to understand. I was in a fatal accident, and for several minutes, I was gone, completely separated from my body. During that time, I crossed over. I saw things no one had ever told me about. And I met Jesus. What he revealed to me, especially about Black people in the Bible, shook me to my core. These were truths that history had erased. And now I feel an undeniable urgency to share them with the world. Because once you hear them, you'll never see things the same way again. It all started like any other morning. I had my coffee, grabbed my car keys, and stepped outside. The sun was warm against my skin. A gentle breeze made everything feel peaceful. I was heading across town to visit my mother, something I did every weekend without fail. I had no idea it would be the last normal morning of my life. Traffic was light, so I turned on my favorite gospel station and hummed along. The song was about God's faithfulness, and I remember feeling this deep sense of gratitude. But then, in an instant, everything changed. As I reached an intersection, the light turned green. I pressed the gas, and out of nowhere, a massive truck ran the red light at full speed. There was no time to react. The impact was brutal. My body jolted, the sound of crushing metal filled my ears. And then, silence. For a moment, I thought I was still alive. But then I realized I wasn't in my car anymore. I was floating above the wreckage, looking down at my own body slumped over the steering wheel. Paramedics were rushing toward me. People were screaming. But I felt no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of detachment. Like I was watching a movie play out in front of me. And then I felt it. Something was pulling me away, drawing me upward. The world around me blurred, and I was suddenly surrounded by darkness. But it wasn't empty. It was alive, like something unseen was waiting for me beyond the void. And then a light appeared. It started small but grew brighter and stronger until it was all I could see. I knew I was crossing over into something I couldn't comprehend. The moment I left my body, everything shifted. I wasn't flying. I wasn't walking. It was as if I was being pulled forward by an invisible force. No gravity, no weight, just movement. At first, there was only darkness, but I wasn't afraid. The darkness wasn't empty. It was full of something I couldn't quite understand. Then, ahead of me, a tunnel of light appeared, stretching infinitely. But this wasn't just any light. It wasn't like sunlight or fire. It was alive. It had warmth, intelligence. It recognized me, welcomed me, and I felt drawn toward it, moving effortlessly. Then I heard it. Music, but not like anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't from instruments. It was something deeper, a sound that existed beyond sound. It was pure energy, vibrating in harmony, and as it filled me, I felt more alive than I ever had in my earthly body. As I moved through the tunnel, I saw flashes of my life, moments I had long forgotten, both good and bad. But they weren't playing like a movie. I was feeling them. I felt every emotion I had ever caused in others, the love I had given, the hurt I had unknowingly inflicted. Everything was laid bare before me. And just as I started to understand where I was going, something incredible happened. The tunnel ended, and I stepped into a place so breathtaking that my mind struggled to process it. It wasn't heaven as I had imagined. It was something even more profound. And waiting for me, bathed in radiant light, was a figure I immediately recognized, someone I had never met in this life, yet somehow knew beyond a doubt. It was Jesus. Their eyes held a wisdom beyond human understanding, and somehow I knew. They were souls who had already crossed over, watching as I made my journey. The closer I got to the end, the more the light transformed. It grew so intense that I thought it would consume me. But instead of fear, I felt an overwhelming sense of love. This wasn't just light, it was him. I fell to my knees, not because I had to, but because it was the only response that made sense. Never in my life had I felt so small, yet so deeply cherished at the same time. Before me stood Jesus. His presence was more real than anything I had ever known. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. His eyes alone told me everything, that he knew me, that he had always known me, every mistake, every doubt, every wound I had carried through life. It was all laid bare before him. And yet, there was only love in his gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't just a sound, it was a force that moved through my very being. Emily, you were brought here for a reason. The moment he said my name, the world around me shifted. The light faded and suddenly, I was standing in a vast expanse, surrounded by glowing scrolls floating in midair. I didn't need to open them. I already knew what they contained. They were records, history itself, truths that had been lost or deliberately hidden. Then I saw something that shook me to my core. Visions flashed before my eyes. I saw Moses, his skin dark as the earth, leading his people through the Red Sea. I saw the Queen of Sheba, regal and wise, her lineage stretching far beyond what history books had told us. I saw the people of Israel, the real Israelites, not the ones depicted in paintings, but men and women with deep brown skin, their eyes burning with divine purpose. My heart pounded. I turned to Jesus. Why wasn't this taught to us? His expression was both sorrowful and firm, because the world has rewritten what I gave them. But truth cannot be erased forever. And then I saw it all. The rise and fall of kingdoms, the slow creep of deception into history, how the faces of those in Scripture had been changed to fit an agenda. Many of the key figures in the Bible were black. Their identities had been distorted over time, their true heritage erased from the stories passed down through generations. Jesus looked at me, his presence radiating both authority and love. This truth must be revealed, he said, and you must share it. At that moment, I understood. I had been sent back with a mission, but before I could respond, everything around me began to fade. I was being pulled away, away from the light, away from Jesus. My time was up. As I stood in his overwhelming presence, I realized that every idea I had about him had been incomplete. The paintings, the movies, the descriptions I'd grown up with, none of them captured the fullness of who he truly was. He wasn't just a figure of kindness and wisdom. He was power, authority, love itself. His skin had the depth of burnished bronze. His hair was thick and textured like wool. And his eyes? They weren't just looking at me. They were seeing me. Through my soul, through my past, my present, and even my future. There was no hiding, no pretending. Every sin, every doubt, every fear I had ever carried lay exposed before him. And yet, in his presence, I felt no shame. Only love. He didn't speak right away. Instead, I felt his words before I even heard them, as if he was placing knowledge directly into my spirit. Then, in a voice that resonated through every fiber of my being, he said, "Emily, I have waited for you." Tears filled my eyes, though I couldn't even explain why. It was a homecoming, a reunion with someone I had always known, but had somehow forgotten. I wanted to ask so many things. Why am I here? What is happening? But before I could, he raised his hand, and the space around us shifted. A vision unfolded, not just in front of my eyes, but within my entire consciousness. It wasn't just something I was seeing. I was experiencing the truth itself. The air shimmered, and massive scrolls appeared, unrolling in midair, glowing with golden light. And on them were words unlike anything I had ever seen, ancient, sacred, unaltered by time, truths that the world had tried to bury. But the time for silence was over. The scrolls glowed, their words shifting between languages I didn't recognize, yet somehow I understood. As I focused, images began to emerge, revealing events from thousands of years ago. I saw faces, strong, dark-skinned people standing in the desert, walking through grand palaces, carrying wisdom passed down for generations. Then I saw Noah and his family. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, stood beside him. Their skin was rich, their features distinct, nothing like the pale depictions I had grown up seeing. And then, Moses. He stood before the Red Sea, his hands raised, calling upon the power of God. Behind him, men, women, and children, the true Israelites, watched with wide, faith-filled eyes as the waters split before them. Their skin was dark, their hearts filled with both awe and fear. My pulse raced. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling. Why has no one told us this? His face was filled with sorrow. Because history has been rewritten, but the truth remains, waiting to be uncovered. The vision shifted. I saw temples, towering and magnificent, libraries overflowing with knowledge, books, scrolls, wisdom that had been lost or hidden away. I saw the Ethiopian eunuch speaking with Philip. I saw the Queen of Sheba visiting Solomon, her wisdom unmatched. I saw the black warriors of Cush, standing unshaken against mighty empires. These weren't minor figures in history. They were central to the divine story of humanity. This knowledge was never meant to be erased, Jesus said, but those who feared the truth buried it. Now I am calling my people to remember who they are. The vision continued. I saw more faces, more moments in time. I saw Simon of Cyrene, the man who carried the cross for Jesus. I could feel the strength in his arms, the pain in his eyes as he bore the weight of that sacred burden. He wasn't just a bystander. He was chosen, a part of the divine plan. I saw the early church, the disciples spreading the gospel, traveling across Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Nubia. I saw the first Christians, not the ones I'd seen in Western paintings, but men and women who looked like the people I had known my entire life. Jesus' voice was steady. These are the ones who carried my message first, before Rome, before Europe. My words spread through these lands first, and yet their names have been forgotten. I felt overwhelmed. Everything I thought I knew about history had been incomplete. This wasn't just about misinterpretation. It was an intentional erasure. These figures weren't just supporting characters in the Bible. They were the foundation of the faith itself. Jesus turned to me, his eyes piercing through my soul. You must tell them. You must help them remember. I trembled. This wasn't just a vision. This was a mission. The scrolls shifted again, and suddenly I saw something different. Prophecies, ancient words coming to life, events that had been foretold playing out in real time. I saw a people scattered, taken from their lands, forced into bondage, stripped of their names and their history. I saw ships crossing the ocean, chains clinking, tears falling into the water. My heart ached. I knew what I was seeing. The transatlantic slave trade, the suffering, the displacement, the stolen identities. Jesus spoke softly. They were taken, but they were never forgotten. The vision shifted again. I saw people waking up, realizing who they truly were. I saw communities reconnecting with their spiritual roots, rediscovering the truth of their ancestry. I saw prayers breaking chains. Not physical chains, but mental and spiritual ones. Jesus' voice carried an unshakable certainty. The time is coming when the lost will be found, when those who are scattered will remember their place in my kingdom. And then I saw something breathtaking. A great gathering, a movement of people rising up, reclaiming their faith, standing in their divine identity. This wasn't just about history, it was about prophecy. It was happening now. Jesus' expression grew solemn. But there will be those who fight against this truth. They will call it lies. They will deny it. But the time of awakening cannot be stopped. I knew he was right. I felt the urgency in his words. The world had tried to erase this knowledge, but the truth was rising again. And I had been chosen to help share it. These revelations filled me with an overwhelming sense of urgency. This wasn't just about history. It was about a battle for truth. I saw shadows creeping over the earth, twisting reality, covering knowledge like a thick fog. Powerful institutions, governments, religious leaders, scholars had gone to great lengths to hide the truth, rewriting history to fit a narrative that served them. Entire generations had been deceived, taught a version of events that erased their true place in God's plan. I turned to Jesus, my heart heavy. Why would they do this? His face was both sorrowful and firm. Because knowledge is power. Images flooded my mind. Whitewashed saints, European depictions of biblical figures, false teachings passed down as truth. This wasn't just ignorance, it was intentional. I saw how those who tried to reveal the truth were silenced, ridiculed, dismissed as conspiracy theorists. The enemy didn't need to erase the truth completely. He only needed to make people doubt it. Jesus' voice resonated with authority. The greatest weapon of the enemy is deception. He cannot destroy the truth, so he distorts it. He keeps my people in chains of ignorance, knowing that as long as they do not understand who they are, they will never walk in their full power. Then I saw something chilling. I saw the forces of darkness working against Black people specifically, sowing division, planting self-hatred, clouding their identity with confusion. I saw how media, entertainment, even the education system were being used to reinforce the idea that they were insignificant, that their history began with slavery rather than kingship. But Jesus' voice thundered with truth. The chains are breaking. The awakening has begun. My people are remembering. I knew this battle was far from over, but I also knew that the truth was rising. Then Jesus showed me a vision of the world as it is today. Pain, chaos, division. And yet I could feel it. Everything was leading somewhere. I saw nations in turmoil, leaders making secret decisions, societies inching closer to a tipping point. The world was being prepared for something big, something that would shake the very foundation of humanity. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with urgency. Emily, they are not ready. I saw people, still asleep, distracted by material things, social media, entertainment, endless debates, anything to keep them from seeing what was truly happening. The warnings had been given, but only a few were listening. I saw truth being censored, buried behind algorithms and media manipulation. I saw voices silenced. Even within the church, many were afraid to speak the whole truth, choosing comfort over conviction. Tell them, Jesus said, tell them that time is short. Tell them to prepare, to seek me with all their hearts. There will be a great shaking, and only those grounded in truth will stand. I saw disasters, wars, economic collapse, but I also saw hope. Those who returned to God, who sought His truth, would be protected. My people must come together, Jesus urged. They must return to me, to prayer, to righteousness. They must reclaim their identity before it is too late. I wanted to ask what was coming next, but deep down I already knew. change, a shift that would separate those who walked in truth from those who chose to remain blind. As I stood in the presence of Jesus, he lifted his hand, and suddenly I saw something beautiful. Prayers, thousands, millions. They floated like beams of light, some strong and powerful, piercing the heavens. Others weak, barely flickering, struggling to break through the layers of darkness. Jesus' voice was filled with sorrow. Prayer is the most powerful force on earth, yet my people have forgotten its power. I saw how prayer connected people across time and space, how a single, heartfelt prayer could change an entire bloodline, break generational curses, open doors that had been shut for centuries. And then, I saw something that took my breath away. I saw the prayers of Black ancestors, men and women who had been enslaved, who had suffered, who had cried out to God for deliverance. Their prayers had not disappeared. They had been stored, accumulating power over time. Generations had been waiting for this moment, the appointed time. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with unwavering certainty. Now is the time, he said. Their prayers are being answered. The chains of spiritual oppression are breaking. My people are waking up. A deep realization settled over me. Prayer was more than just a personal act. It was a connection to something far greater. An unbroken thread stretching through time, binding past, present, and future. A force powerful enough to undo centuries of lies and restore what had been lost. Jesus' voice rang with authority. Tell them to pray with power. Tell them to speak life, to reject the enemy's lies, to call upon my name with authority. For in prayer, they will find their strength. Then, he showed me something beyond anything I could have imagined. A glimpse of the future. A moment unlike anything the world had ever seen. I saw people, millions of them, coming together, standing on hills in cities and deserts, gathering from every direction, not divided by nation, language, or race. They were one people. God's people, awakening to their true purpose. I saw young men and women stepping boldly into leadership, speaking truth without fear. I saw families restored, communities rebuilt, a deep spiritual hunger rising like never before. Jesus smiled. This is the great awakening. But not all would listen. I turned and saw others, those who refused to believe. Some mocked, some turned away, clinging to the comfortable lies they had always known. Their hearts were hardened. And then I saw something even greater, a final separation. Those who followed God were being led into light. Those who rejected him walked into darkness. The time of choosing was coming, and every soul would have to make a decision. Jesus turned to me, his voice filled with both love and urgency. Go back, Emily. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them that I am calling them home. I wanted to stay. I wanted to remain in that place of pure love, of divine truth. I wanted to ask more, to understand more. But before I could respond, I felt it, a force pulling me backward. The light began to fade, the visions disappeared. I was being pulled through space and time, my soul resisting, but the force was too strong. And then, pain. I gasped, air rushing into my lungs like I had been underwater for hours. My chest burned, my head pounded, every inch of my body ached in ways I couldn't describe. Voices swirled around me, doctors, nurses, machines beeping. I blinked hard, trying to focus. The hospital ceiling came into view, bright and sterile. Someone shouted, "She's back!" I heard sobbing. My mother's voice. She was holding my hand, whispering prayers. I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. I had been dead for several minutes. And yet, here I was. As my awareness returned, so did the weight of everything I had just experienced. I had been with Jesus. I had seen things no one had ever told me. I had been given a mission to tell the world the truth. But how? Would people believe me? I closed my eyes, overwhelmed, and that's when I felt it. In the corner of the room, barely visible, was a shimmering presence. Not Jesus, but something else. An angel, watching, waiting, a confirmation that everything I had seen was real. This was no ordinary second chance. This was a calling. As I lay in that hospital bed, my body weak but my spirit on fire, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had been shown. The hidden truth, the erased history, the prophecies unfolding right before our eyes. And most of all, Jesus' final words. Tell them what you have seen. For a moment, I wanted to ignore it, to convince myself it was just a dream, a hallucination caused by trauma. But deep down, I knew better. This was real, and if I stayed silent, I would be turning my back on everything I had just witnessed. So I began to speak, first to my mother, then to the world. At first, I shared my testimony with close friends. Their reactions were mixed. Some sat in awe, hanging on every word. Others hesitated, their eyes filled with doubt. But the more I spoke, the more I felt the weight of Jesus' command. And then, something unexpected happened. As I shared my experience, I began meeting others, people who had seen visions, people who had felt the truth stirring in their spirit, but never knew how to explain it. It was as if God was gathering his people, bringing together those who were ready to hear. That's when I realized I couldn't keep this to myself. This wasn't just my story, it was a message for everyone with ears to hear. So now I'm speaking to you. If you're hearing this testimony, it's not by accident. You were meant to. You were led here for a reason. Maybe you've always felt something was off, like the history we've been taught doesn't quite add up. Maybe deep down you've sensed there's more to your identity, more to the Bible, more to the spiritual battle we are living through. You are not alone. Jesus is calling his people back to him. He is removing the veil. He is restoring the truth. He is awakening those who are ready. But the choice is yours. You can ignore this message. You can dismiss it, tell yourself it's just a story. Or you can listen. You can seek. You can pray with a new understanding, asking God to reveal the truth. Because I promise you, once you ask, once you open your heart, he will answer. Time is short. Jesus showed me that the world is moving toward a great shift. The enemy is working overtime, doing everything he can to keep people blind, to keep them from waking up to who they really are. But those who listen, those who prepare, those who return to true prayer, they will not be shaken. So I ask you, will you seek the truth? Will you reclaim your identity? Will you turn to God, not as the world teaches, but as Jesus himself revealed? The time is now. The awakening has begun, but only those willing to hear will receive it. When I left the hospital, nothing felt the same. The world around me looked familiar, yet I could sense something deeper, something I had never noticed before. It was as if my vision had changed, as if I was seeing beyond the physical world into something more. I would walk down the street and feel it. Waves of energy in the air, subtle yet undeniable. Some places carried a heavy darkness, like spiritual oppression lingering over them. Other places radiated peace, as if they had been bathed in prayer. I couldn't explain it to others without sounding crazy, but I knew. I was seeing reality as it truly was, and it wasn't just places. People had an energy about them, something deeper than words could ever reveal. Some carried burdens so heavy I could feel their pain just by standing near them. Others radiated light, a divine presence, as if they walked with God in a way most never did. At night, my dreams changed. They were no longer just scattered thoughts or random images. They felt like messages, warnings, glimpses into things yet to come. Some nights, I saw Jesus again, standing in the same radiant light, reminding me of my mission. Other nights, I saw battles, not just stories from the Bible, real battles in the spirit, warriors of light clashing against forces of darkness. And deep in my soul, I knew this was not a vision of the past. This was happening now. One night, I woke up suddenly. My heart was racing. A whisper echoed in my mind. The veil is thinning. At first, I didn't understand. But as the days passed, it became clear. More people were waking up. More people were questioning what they had been taught. And at the same time, the enemy was working harder than ever. Distracting, dividing, deceiving. This wasn't just my personal transformation. It was a sign of something much bigger. A shift was happening. The world was not what it seemed, and the time for choosing sides was drawing near. I had been given a second chance, but it wasn't just for me. It was for them, for anyone willing to listen, for anyone searching for the truth. Jesus didn't just show me hidden history or lost identities. He showed me something far greater. We are in the middle of a war, a battle not for land or power, but for the souls of humanity. And the only way to win is to return to Him. Not through man-made religion, not through empty rituals, but through true connection, through prayer, through seeking Him with all our hearts. So now, I have a mission. I have to tell the world what I saw. I don't care if people call me crazy. I don't care if they reject my words, because I know what I experienced, and I know what Jesus told me. The deception in this world runs deep, but the truth is rising, and those who seek it will find it. Those who pray for wisdom will receive it. So I ask you, what will you do? Will you brush this off as just another story? Or will you start to ask questions? Will you let the distractions of this world keep you asleep? Or will you wake up and remember who you are? Jesus is calling His people back to Him. He is restoring what was lost. He is revealing what was hidden. But only those who are willing to listen will understand. I don't know what comes next. I don't know how much time we have. But I do know this. God is moving. The awakening is happening. And those who are ready will see miracles like never before. The world is changing. The battle lines are being drawn. And now, the choice is yours.